Can we just start with an injury update? Obviously, Jota, Lil Bada, after he went off the other night as well.
Yeah, Jota's not available still for tomorrow again. We're just sort of being conservative with him. We expect him to sort of be back in training next week at some point, so be available then. So Jota's out. Liel's fine, he's trained. The only ones from the other night are Dave Turnbull picked up a bit of a knock on his ankle, so he's out tomorrow, and Welshie also picked up a knock at training, so he's out tomorrow. But everyone else is okay.
How are the players all feeling after midweek? We've spoken about this so many times about the difference between the Champions League and the league. Is that something that you need to manage when you're going from winning almost every game domestically to then the difficulty that you're facing in the Champions League?
No, not really. I mean, our approach certainly doesn't change. So between competitions, so I don't think in terms of our preparation or our recoveries or our switch from one to the other, doesn't really change to any great extent. The players understand our processes. We did our review. We gave them the feedback, and they're understanding that back in the league and facing a good opponent at home, and we've got to be ready for it.
Just looking at the week that Scottish football teams have had in Europe. I mean, I'm assuming that you think it's better to be involved and lose than not be involved at all. So could you outline what the positives are that Scottish football teams can take from being involved in these type of games?
As opposed to just not being involved at all.
Yeah, what I'm saying is...
So what you're saying is, so we just play a domestic competition and just ignore everything else. Look, I get your question, and I understand the whole sort of... living here now for 18 months, I've seen the Scottish national team go from heroes to no-hopers to heroes again. So I understand this whole, boom-bust cycle that everyone loves to get into here, and the whole woe is me. We're not the only country that struggles to get results at Champions League level. And I can only talk for my club, but if anyone can tell me in the 4 games we've played that we don't deserve to be there, or we've been outplayed, or we've looked out of place, then I reckon they're talking from an agenda or from some sort of bias, because the only questions I've had after each of our games is about opportunities missed. The opportunities missed suggests to me that we've got to improve some areas, for sure, 100%. But no, it doesn't say to me that we somehow should think that we don't belong in a competition that we've earned the right to be in.
I was thinking, can you take heart also from results? You look at Maccabi Haifa beating Juve and also Bruges topping a group, but it shows that clubs can punch above their weight in the competition, doesn't it?
Yeah, but you look at those clubs historically, have they always had those results? They haven't, I'll tell you. So what it means is the longer you're in this competition, the more opportunities you have to grow and make an impact. But, you're not going to go in there, for the first time and expect that you're going to dominate the most prestigious club competition in the world. So, like I said, I mean, I'm only talking about our club. I'm not going to talk about other clubs because they've got their own representatives to talk about them. But from our perspective, we felt we've earned the right to be in this competition. We felt that during this competition, we know the areas we've come up short in, and they're the areas we need to improve. But at no stage do I believe, or any objective observer I'd suggest would believe, that we don't deserve, or we haven't looked, or we've looked out of place in this competition.
Hi, Ange, just to finally to touch on that there, you mentioned obviously not being able to fast track this process. It takes time, commitment and whatnot for your players to reach that level and get that success. Is that something you can put a time frame on, or is that just it comes with playing at this stage and playing and measuring yourself against the best?
No, because no other club has put a time frame on it. It's about being at that level, exposing yourself, having the opportunity to play at that level on a consistent basis. So that means having to qualify for it. I mean, this is the first time we've been in it for 5 years. So we've got to qualify for it consistently, which exposes you to that level of football, and every year you want to grow, and that's what our objective needs to be. Like most clubs sort of our size, or if you take away sort of the clubs that come from the big 5 leagues, the rest of the leagues, the ones who have made an impact at the Champions level are consistent qualifiers for it. If this was our 5th or 6th year of being in the competition, then I'd be having a different discussion with people. But, it's all about perspective. It's all about what you are trying to achieve. And this is our first year back in 5 years. And as I said, I haven't faced, unless people are, hiding it from me, but I haven't faced a press conference yet where people have said to me, well, Ange, you guys were totally out of your depth today. How do you explain that? The questions I've been answering have been about opportunities missed. So, I'm not going to accept that people suggesting that somehow we haven't earned our place in this competition, or somehow we've let the game in this country down by the way we've gone about our approach.
And just looking towards Hibs, Lee Johnson done well with the side. Just what's your thoughts on that one? How tough do you think that one's going to be on Saturday? Yeah,
good challenge for us. Lee Johnson's come in, and he's obviously he's made a lot of changes from the club from last year, and he's kind of brought in players that I think will suit the kind of football he wants to play. It's a process, obviously, with all these things, but they're certainly they've been in really good form. Apart from the midweek game, which I still think they played well in, but obviously the result went against them. Their recent form's been good, and we expect a good challenge. But again, at home, we've been really consistent with our performances over the last sort of 15, 16 months, and we just got to make sure we bring the kind of energy that we know we can and tempo in the game, and when we do that, we know we're hard to stop.
I just wondered about the intensity of playing Champions League back-to-back. I mean, since you've come in, you've pretty much always played 3 or 4 a game every 3 or 4 days. But having the Champions League so condensed this year, do you feel that the intensity has been more, or are you used to it now?
No, I think what you're finding is, and it's not just our club, I think most clubs involved, there's a higher attrition rate in terms of players, because usually there's a fortnight between Champions League games at different times, and you get the opportunity to recover because they are high-intensity games. I mean, our physical numbers out of, Wednesday night were very, very high in terms of the output we had to give for that game, because you're playing against, high-quality opposition, so you have to work harder than you normally do. So, the fact that we've been going back-to-back, and, it doesn't, for a club like ours, I guess it doesn't ease up, because even though we have no Champions League this week, we got a cup game in midweek. But I think what you're finding is that you're seeing probably a rise in the number of injuries with clubs involved in these competitions because of that. Because ultimately we all want to still try and play at the same level with the same tempo and intensity. But obviously the players, at some point will break down if you keep doing that.
How big a concern is that for you? Is that for the players? How big a concern is it for the club? And is it something that you've spoken to other managers about, other managers in Europe about?
Oh, I think there wouldn't be a manager who hasn't spoken about it. But, obviously we're at the mercy of the competitions we're involved in. And I guess from our perspective, we're a club that wants to have success and wants to compete in all the competitions, which means, for us, that's, at least 3 domestic competitions plus Europe. So, and obviously this year with the World Cup sort of being there, that's condensed it even further, which is a challenge. But, I think most managers have spoken out about the fact that, we're going to see some pretty high attrition rate from players if we continue with these kind of schedules.
Ange, can I ask you about how you feel Carter-Vickers is handling the kind of on-field captaincy? He said himself he's maybe not the most vocal, but he seems to bring a composure and calmness to everything he does. Has that been a help? Yeah,
absolutely. It's the reason I put him in there. I think obviously when you lose somebody as influential as Callum, you're not going to sort of fill that breach with someone who's a carbon copy of him. So, for me, I think was really important that we have some stability. And we've already got guys like Joe Hart, who's very vocal as a leader in his own right. Other guys who, like Greg Taylor and others who are quite vocal in the dressing rooms, Josip Juranovic. But I just felt we needed a different type of leader also. And I think with Cameron, when he's out there, I think the lads, do see him as a leader in the way he plays and the way he goes about his business. And I think it's for me it was a bit of a sort of a balancing act as to sort of what kind of leadership we needed through this period that Callum's out. And I just felt with Joe and a couple of others providing the sort of the vocal aspect, having Cam in there would help us, and I think he's done well.
And just on the subject of your centre halves, is there any update on Carl Starfelt? Are you hopeful of getting him back soon, or is it just
it's still a couple of weeks, mate. He's out there training, but still a couple of weeks. We're hopeful before the break, but the reality of it is with so many games, you'd have to think about which game you put him in, because we don't have a lot of recovery between games these days. So, but he is out running. It's just it'll be at least a couple of weeks before we can even consider him for selection.
Just want to get your thoughts on VAR now that there's a definite date for it to come into Scottish football, and just what you think about it and how it will be used in the game.
Look, I've already said that. I think it's inevitable. It's coming everywhere else. I have experience with it in Japan. I had experience with it at international level. We obviously use it in European competitions, so it makes sense that the league here also follows suit. It doesn't really change anything from my perspective, because I've never sort of spent too much time worrying about or sort of letting decisions made during a football game that are outside my control derail my focus from what's important. But I think hopefully it provides clarity over some key decisions, helps the referees out more than anything else. I mean, I think it's a tool for referees more than a tool for us as managers or football clubs. But I know the one certainty I do know, particularly here in Scotland, that it won't stop the complaints about decisions. That's for sure.
Do you feel like it will affect the game in terms of when goals go in and then the celebration has to be delayed until decisions are made and things like that? Do you think it could have a negative effect in that way?
Look, at some point it does a little bit, but I think they're getting better at that in terms of the speed at which they're making decisions. I think is improving compared to, say, even a year ago. Look, I think people understand the difficulties around using technology in a game like ours. With other sports where there's a lot more of a stop-start nature to it, it's a lot easier to bring technology in. Ours was, and it's why we've probably been the last sport that sort of introduced it, because there's very little time in our game to stop and sort of scrutinise things. So I think what we're hopeful for is over time that the technology improves. We know that every time I get a new iPhone, it takes me 6 months to figure it out, and then they bring out another one. So, technology is improving, and you kind of hope with VAR it's the same thing, where decisions are made a lot quicker and there's less disruption to what's happening.
Hi, Ange. So this exact fixture earlier on in the year handed debuts to Daizen Maeda and Rio Hatate, as well as a sub-appearance from Yosuke Ideguchi. I know you don't like to lump the 3 or 4 Japanese players together, but from that point in January this year to now, what development have you seen in them, both on and off the pitch?
Yeah, enormous in terms of, both, as you said, on and off the pitch. I think they've really sort of adjusted to life here. They've worked hard themselves at improving their language skills so that, they're less reliant on sort of translators and being able to communicate with their teammates and just generally fitting in. They're pretty resilient in terms of, they all came out here with a real ambition to have a career for themselves. So whatever sort of difficulties or setbacks they've had along the way, they've worked hard with the help of our staff here to overcome them. And in terms of their football, I think they're improving. Obviously, with Yosuke Ideguchi, he's had some setbacks, unfortunate ones, and it's taken him longer sort of to adjust to the football here. But Rayo and Dazen, I think they're still two relatively young players. I think are adjusting to football here and the demands that it has, and are improving all the time.
And Sead Haksabanovic has played in a number of positions since coming into the Celtic side following his move from Kazan. How important is his versatility to the team, given both the hectic schedule and the injuries that the side are currently facing?
Yeah, very important. It was one of the reasons we brought him in. We felt like we needed a player who could play. He can play both wings, play right wing, left wing, and he can play, as he's already shown, as sort of that advanced midfield position as well. So that is important, as you said, because invariably you don't know where you're going to get injuries, and for us they seem to come in clusters of almost the same position at times. So having a guy who can fill in 2 or 3 areas is really good, and it's important to our squad structure. And besides all that, he's a very good player. He's got some great technical ability. Again, he's still relatively young, so there's improvement in him, and he's really determined. I think he's embracing the football club and he's enjoying being here. Understands the size of this football club, and I think he sees a real opportunity for himself to establish himself here and really get his career going.
As a team, psychological transition from Champions League to league match proving to be difficult, or do you think they get a benefit from that?
Oh, look, it's a bit of both. I mean, there's obviously the challenges of everyone feels good after a good result and doesn't feel good after a bad result, because that's just human nature, and that's how you want them to feel. So you don't feel like you're results wise you're flying. So that tends to, more from a psychological perspective, can sometimes again just derail your focus as to what's important, because if you think you're struggling just because of the results and you take that into your league form, where then I think it can be a bit of a burden. But the flip side of that is that what we're showing the players is that for large parts of these Champions League games, we're matching it with some of the best clubs in world football, and that should give them the confidence then to take that into the league and say, look, if we can perform at similar levels in our league games, then we're going to be hard to stop. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. I think again, it's one of those things that if you're in it for a number of years, you learn to cope with these things better. My sort of radar's up at the moment, just to make sure that the players aren't affected by the fact that the results aren't there at Champions League level, and just keep reminding them that our league form has been pretty compelling and our performances haven't been far off it either.
Oh, good, excellent. And just to that league form, we're a huge 9 points better off than last year. I assume our primary focus, Ange, going into this next phase of the season is on doing all we can to get the maximum points from these 6 league games prior to the break. Yeah,
look, as you said, we've been fairly consistent in our league form, and credit to the players that they've been relentless in that. We lost the game, the first one in quite a while, but we haven't even been really drawing games. We've been really strong in winning games of football, finding ways to win, as we showed in the last game. At St Johnson, and we did that a number of times last year, and I think that's an important part of any year's fabric. If you want to be champions, there's going to be games where you're just going to have to find a way to win, and as much as you'd like every game to be comfortable and win by a number of goals, that's not going to be the case, and you need to make sure that you got that resilience. And I think that was important last week, that the lads, even though we were frustrated we didn't put the game away earlier, winning it the way we did shows that that's still there, that character's still there, and that's going to be important, especially with, as you said, this cluster of games where, with the number of games we've got, it's going to be a bit of a grind in terms of, trying to make sure that we hit our levels. We're going to have to change the team a bit. We're going to have injuries. But, this group of players, they've shown tremendous character over the last sort of 12, 14 months, and I know that's still there. They showed that last week, and it's going to be important.